check. He was very excited about that, that he had got his check. And he said, Mommy, I'm going to cash my check, and I want to bring home some money to help pay the rent. And I thought that was interesting because my rent was already paid.
Right.
But what he was just expressing is previously he was using all his other checks to save up for a car.
Oh, okay.
And so, you know, he was 19, and he was one to let me know that he wasn't being selfish, you know, by saving all his checks, that he wanted just to contribute to the household of showing responsibility. So that's what that meant. And then I received a phone call about 1:20 in the morning.
Okay, so a few hours after.
A few hours, absolutely. And the question was asked, was he at home? And I said, no, he's not. And I knew he got off at 11.
Okay, and is this a police officer who's talking?
No,
to you?
it was my girlfriend
Okay.
and her son had called me, and it had been announced that it was 4 that was killed, executed basically in a car, and that my son was one of the ones that was inside the car. So, you know.
So what was going,
how,
the reaction?
You know, how I responded was, it's something that my son had wrote about a one-woman show that me and my business partner do called Harriet Tubman, the Underground Railroad. And in one of those pieces, we sing a song, I'm not going to let anyone turn me around. And I just started singing that song. I'm not going to let nobody turn me around. Turn me around. Turn me around. And I just held strong. And they were really surprised, and they started singing with me, because I had a dream about 7 years ago that my son was going to die according to a homicide, and that I was looking for his body at the police department, and there was in the middle of the street a trash can. And I was looking inside, like, why am I looking inside of this trash can? And symbolically, I realized that what was shown to me is that our children, a lot of these black young men, are being disposed of as if they are likened to trash.
Right.
As if they are likened to waste. And they are what's considered a low condition in society. And when I received the phone call, he was always with me.
Okay.
He wasn't at work, if he wasn't at school, because he had sclerosis of the spine and Oscar's disease in his knees, so he couldn't do sports. So one of his favorite hobbies was to always be on the video, here. So he was always with me, and I protected him by always keeping him close to me because of that dream. And I just was not going to have that dream manifest.
Right.
And when I received the phone call, I was completely numb. And myself was totally shocked. And the only thing I can do was to sing that song, to pray, to keep my composure. And when she asked, was he at home? And when she said what she said, I was like,
I know.
I was like, I knew when she called, and his Elohim Father called, which means in Hebrew creator, I knew what it was when they were calling me at 1:20. I knew what it was. I was asleep. And I knew that this was going to be a responsibility for me to be strong for them,
Right.
who I loved, and for many
The rest of your family.
mothers
as well
and
as the mothers who were.
the community. I knew that myself needed to be strong because I realized that it was already shown to me. And it was shown to me for a reason. And I knew that his death meant that it was an obligation and a responsibility that I knew was put on my shoulders.
Right. And did you know any of the mothers of the other victims already before this took place?
I knew his friend who he saw that evening.
Okay.
His name was, I didn't know him as Achin. I knew him as Harith.
Okay.
And that is who he saw, who he asked for a ride that evening. So me and his mother was very, very close. And she raised him well, you know. And I know that I've been talking to her. She did an excellent job. And we've just been comforting one another. Because he loved his brother so much, his spiritual brother,
Right.
that he was not going to have anyone in the community tell him that he couldn't talk to his family members. He wasn't going to allow that. His brother and my son, Yalani had no one looking for him. So he didn't have anyone that was out to hurt him.
No enemies. So when the police ruled
No enemies.
it gang violence, did that upset you?
Yeah.
You and shocked you?
It definitely did, because Yalani, my son, he was raised in the Fillmore. So when I would drop him off, and he would visit for about 45 minutes to friends over there in, they called the Mag Block. In 45 minutes to an hour, he'd call me and say, "Mommy, come pick me up," right in front of McDonald's. So I knew that it wasn't gang related with my son, is because he was at work.
Right.
And I had just received a phone call from him that he was going to cash his check. And so on the phone, they told me what happened is that he was on his half-an-hour lunch break. And then myself talked to his colleague who went with him to cash his check. And I also went and talked to his boss, John from Benihana's Japanese restaurant, who let it be known that he was on his half-an-hour break, and he told them he was going to cash his check. And the colleague definitely shared with me is that they went on their lunch break and they walked to Geary and Fillmore, and the check cashing place was closed. Then the words he used was he wanted to surprise me. Very persistent young man. And he walked to Charlie's Market on Golden Gate in Fillmore, and that's where his colleague said he saw his friend. And they were sitting in the car, and he asked the friend to take them back to work because his colleague had 5 minutes and my son had 15 minutes. So my son, he hated to walk, especially because he was always in so much pain with his sclerosis. So he wanted a ride. And his colleague said, oh, he only had a few minutes. And then another witness stated that it was not told to him, that he had no knowledge that this car
was
a stolen vehicle, and found out that whoever the driver was, which I didn't know, I didn't know any of the other two families, that the car was purchased from an older gentleman in the community that couldn't find the pink slip for $25. So that is probably why they didn't tell my son that it was stolen, because probably to them it wasn't stolen. So I was told that they were texting. Not my son.